Hello folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. The Independent Line, a South African newspaper, ran a story today entitled Why Trump Snubbed Ramaphosa at the G7 Summit Amid Iran-Israel Conflict. U.S. President Donald Trump appears to have snubbed his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, when he left the G7 Summit in Canada before the two could meet. How exactly? According to the schedule for the G7 Summit, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the schedule she shared in her press conference, Trump never had a meeting with Ramaphosa, despite Cyril's false claims a full week prior to the G7 summit that he would be meeting with Trump. How exactly do you snub someone with whom you have nothing scheduled? I'm curious. Now, according to the Independent Line, the meeting between Trump and Ramaphosa was expected to discuss trade agreements, including the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act and U.S.-South Africa tariffs. What meeting? Again, there was no meeting planned or scheduled. And AGOA? The Africa Growth and Opportunity Act expires in 3.5 months. What is there to discuss? I love how South African media remain either wholly ignorant of current events or simply propagandist. There is no AGOA bill in Congress. It's dead. The Independent Line also reports that political analyst Sandile Tswana said Trump's snub of Ramaphosa was likely due to pressure on Ramaphosa to support the U.S. position on the Iran-Israel conflict. Well, folks, talk about misreading the geopolitical situation. That is not why he did not have a meeting. He didn't have a meeting because Ramaphosa never formally requested one. South Africa's media, its politicians, and even its political analysts seem to be wearing blinders like horses on a racetrack, absolutely convinced that Trump and the United States care about what is important to the ANC. No. This self-centeredness is astounding. The arrogance, the blind belief that what matters to the African National Congress and to South Africa matters in the grand scheme of geopolitics leaves one wondering if time has stood still for South Africa's elites. They seemed trapped in the 1980s when South Africa still mattered geopolitically for its role as a bulwark against communism, for its gold, for its alternate sea lanes. But 2025 is not 1985, and their cognitive dissonance will prove costly for South Africa soon to see the end of duty-free access to the United States marketplace under the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, the imposition of 31% tariffs, and also likely sanctions on key political leaders. Now, Tswana said Trump could not afford to be friendly to Ramaphosa when hostilities were escalating around Israel, including Gaza and Iran. That makes no sense. Trump can afford to be friendly with Pakistan, whose senior military leader visited him yesterday, with Egypt, but not with South Africa? How so? Trump's geopolitical focus on Iran and Israel is not germane to South Africa. Now he goes on to say that Trump wants South Africa to support the U.S. The issue of tariffs and all that is a bind for Trump because he wants to be friendly with Afrikaners and whites in South Africa. So he cannot deprive these white South Africans he wants to be friends with of the revenues they can make from the U.S. Trump wants to be friends with white South Africans? What? Where do you get this silly idea? From the refugee program? You mean the one that's open to coloreds and Indians, not just white South Africans? He wants to be friends with them for the revenues they can make from the U.S. The revenues they can make from the U.S. You do realize that we are giving South Africans duty-free access to America. What are we getting from that? What does Trump get from that? What in the world is this guy talking about? Are you busy watching too many Bell Pottinger propaganda videos? The tariffs really pertain to the relationship between Trump and white South Africans, and I still believe that Trump will give them what they want in exchange for them being a force against Ramaphosa and against the ANC. So that is an incentive, a payoff for them for sustaining Trump's campaign in South Africa. This is just a white supremacist agenda. Trump's campaign in South Africa. What campaign in South Africa? What are you talking about here? The campaign is one drummed up by South African media, its politicians and analysts. Trump has said virtually nothing about South Africa. Give them what they want. Give who what they want? White South Africans? Is this an effort to stereotype 4.8 million people? Trust me. White South Africans have wildly different wants, from leftist surrender monkeys to civic groups to everyday South African citizens. There is no central theme for white South Africans, nor any central demand, other than equal treatment under the law. White supremacist agenda? Why is this always the default narrative? What agenda? What exactly is Trump seeking to advance here? only equality under the law. That's all he's asked for. And how is that a white supremacist? So it's a supremacist idea to be on equal footing with people who aren't white? Look, I really don't want to characterize the statement as racist, but at some point one has to ask the question, is this simply a deflection and a reflection on the black supremacist views of the person making the unfounded statement about Trump? Trump's executive order spelled things out quite clearly. And I quote, "This follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education, and business, and hateful rhetoric and government actions fueling disproportionate violence against racially disfavored landowners." 140 plus racially discriminatory laws are what got Trump's attention, not a desire to make friends with the whiteys. Where do you get this from? How does someone come to this worldview? If he's so interested in doing things for white South Africans, why did he ignore them for 4 years during his first term? What has changed? Why suddenly he's a friend of white South Africans? Where does this come from? The executive order continued. South Africa has taken aggressive positions towards the United States and its allies, including accusing Israel, but not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice, and reinvigorating its relations with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear arrangements. Now, how do they miss the most important line in that executive order? Specifically, Iran, and especially now, Iran. How do you still ignore that statement about the relationship with Iran? The order went on to say the United States cannot support the government of South Africa's commission of rights violations in its country or its undermining United States foreign policy which poses national security threats to our nation, our allies, our African partners, and our interests. Harm to our national interest. Nothing about white South Africans there. Over 4 months after Trump issued his executive order, we still have South African elites carrying the water for the African National Congress, intentionally ignoring what the executive order stated, to push their dual narratives of there is no racial discrimination in South Africa, and Trump is just angry over Gaza. No, it's not the ICJ case. This cognitive dissonance or propaganda conveniently fails to address over 2 decades of insults, slights, and actions directly against the United States interests by the ANC, or the fact that in 2024, under the Biden administration, there was a bipartisan effort in the House of Representatives to introduce legislation to review the relationship with South Africa and punish South Africa's elites for their positions that are anathema to the United States' national interest. This white supremacy nonsense is revolting and has no basis in fact. This is the argument when people have no argument. They bring this out. This is not about white South Africans. It's about the ANC's positions that have harmed the United States, our interests, and our friends, partners, and allies. Full stop. Trump did not snub Ramaphosa. That's a fictitious headline. Just like there was no ambush in the Oval Office. Ramaphosa dug his own grave there. Have you met my white agriculture minister? Ay vey. Unbelievable. And there you have it, folks. More elites carrying the water for the ANC. Either that or they're just simply so self-absorbed that they don't see what's happening around them. It's not about the refugee program. It's not about whites. It's about what South Africa does to harm the United States. Smell the coffee. It's right in front of you. Cheers.